This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome back to Live Talk with Dr. B. Hill. Today we're going to continue with our guests and go back to the articles we did yesterday. So if anyone has any questions, any whatsoever, just use the chat button up in the right-hand corner. So Dr. B, take it away.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. I appreciate it. And of course, we have Dr. Smith, and we have Travis, and we have a wonderful, wonderful show here today. Josh has joined us as well. Josh has been wonderful. He's changed his lunch hours so he could appear in the show on a routine basis. Isn't that great? I just think that's terrific. Anyway, so here we go. Another wonderful day. And Chrissy's going to show some articles, and Dr. Smith is going to take it away from here. Dr. Smith?
Dr. B, how are you feeling today?
I don't feel so hot. I'm running a fever.
And yet still, here you are, dedicated to this show.
Yeah, and as you can tell, I'm freezing. I got my coat on.
Dr. B, we always worry when you get sick, so I hope it turns out to be something short-lived, and you're back to your usual good health quickly.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. And I am very excited about these articles and this section in the book that was written so long ago.
It
It
was
is
a
so,
long
yeah.
time ago, and
Yeah.
when I found these articles some years back, they had a emotional impact on me, and I've always wondered if when other people saw them, if they would have an emotional impact on other people. And I remember myself of initially disbelief that then turned to anger, and just being incredulous, and asking myself, how could they? And then this week, to actually put this article in front of other people and to hear them, and I've actually heard those this week. How could they?
Yes.
Yeah.
How could they? So I thought it was important that we finish this. Okay, we gotta we will not come back to this article next week. We got to finish this. So let's start at the beginning, and we're quickly going to run through to the end. By now, everybody recognizes the title of the book. The title of the book is by Dr. Gunn out of Stockholm, Sweden. The
Yep.
year is 1963. Amazingly, they were looking at catecholamines, which nobody drew catecholamines on humans until we did in 2022,
Right.
which was really 59 years later after this book was published. But Chrissy, if we could please, let's jump to the actual. All right, now here's what I want to get to. Okay, as you all can see right there, it says, and I'll read this. I apologize if I don't get this right. Although I doubt these guys are still around to complain about it. Kolb and Himmelsbach, 1938, have developed a quantitative method for the scoring of all measurable abstinence manifestations in man. Some of these signs and symptoms are, and he goes through with this. And what I want to do is go through this list of symptoms, particularly the ones that a person can self-report. Okay, it's very difficult for a person to self-report their pulse rate. It's very difficult for a person to self-report their temperature. It's very difficult for a person to self-report what their breathing rate is. But it's very easy to self-report your eyes are running or your nose is running. So let's go through this. Okay, and remember, this is 1938. Okay, all right. Now this is for people who are in withdrawal. Okay, people who have developed a dependency on the opioids, and then experience an abrupt stopping in taking the opioids, and they get sick. Now the first one here is restlessness. Okay, now both you guys, think back to when you experienced the horror of the sickness. Did you feel a restlessness?
Yes.
Did I what?
did you feel a sense of restlessness?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
There's a restlessness, but it's not just like a normal restlessness. It's like a never ending, you can't get comfortable, achy. So I mean, you could call it restlessness, but it was worse than that.
Right. I agree.
And yet here it is in 1938, and they're listing it. Rise in respiratory rate and pulse rate, let's just skip those. Rise in blood pressure, let's skip that one. Fever, let's skip that one. Rise in basal metabolism, let's skip that. Rise in blood sugar, let's skip that, because I wanted to get to the next ones. You may or may not remember, but in withdrawal, your pupils are huge.
Yes. Yes.
Did you ever notice that?
Yes. I did. My wife told me, actually, yes.
Your pupils are huge. So here we are in 1938, and what these guys did back in 1938 was they developed a list of symptoms, really by which they could score how severe a person was into withdrawal. And what they're listing here is symptoms of a dysfunction in the nervous system. That's what these are. This is 1938, and they're listing symptoms that are a dysfunction in the nervous system. And what I'd hope to do is to put this in front of you, gentlemen, and we're probably all going to come to an agreement that they hit the nail right on the head, and this is absolutely the symptoms that people experience when they experience the nerve toxicity. And if this was known back in 1938, I feel we're looking again at evidence that they buried it. All right, so
Yes.
restlessness, dilated pupils, tremor. Okay, is that something that you guys remember?
I remember shaking.
Right.
Yes. I remember shaking a lot. Yes.
Right. So the tremor. Now the next word is piloerection. What that means is hair standing on end.
Oh, I remember that. Yep.
Yep.
All
Yep.
my hair. It felt like all my hair on my body was standing up. You almost feel like you have, you know how like when you get scared and you have goosebumps and you get those bumps and your hair sticks up straight? It almost felt like that constantly. I don't know if you had that happen to you, Josh, but that's what it felt like on me. Like my body had those little bumps everywhere. I felt cold, but then my hair, like I'd feel hot one minute, cold the next, but then my hair would stand straight up and you could see those little bumps, almost like goosebumps.
Let's talk about that. Have you ever scared a cat before? And did you see the hair on its back stand up?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever seen a dog getting ready to go into a fight and the hair stands up on the dog?
Yes.
Yep.
Hair standing on end is a very well-known component of the fight or flight mechanism. Okay, so if you're losing control of your nervous system, and part of what you're losing control of is the fight or flight system,
Right.
it kind of makes sense that your hair would stand on end, right?
Correct.
By the way,
Correct.
along with that goes the pupil dilation. That's part of fight or flight. Okay, your pupils get bigger so you can take in more data. Okay, hair standing on end, the restlessness, that's part of fight or flight. Okay, and let's move on to the next one here. Skip reduced weight, caloric intake. Insomnia, it kind of makes sense that if you're,
Yes.
right. Well, if your body has its fight or flight system turned on, and kind of permanently turned on for days, you're not going to fall asleep when you're running from the bear.
No.
And here's the thing, though. Here's the catch-22 on that, Dr. Smith. When you're withdrawing, you're so tired, but you can't sleep because you're so uncomfortable and you can't get comfortable and your mind's racing, so you just can't sleep. But you're so exhausted, you can't even get out of bed. It makes no sense. I know it doesn't make sense, but it's like you're so tired, you can't get out of bed, you can't stand, but at the same time, you can't close your eyes and go to bed because your mind is racing, your body feels like crap, you're having all these aches and pains. I just wanted to bring that up.
So if your fight or flight system was turned on and left on, wouldn't that make sense?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
I mean, that's what happened here. The fight or flight system got turned on and left on. By the way, at the same time, the rest and digest system got turned on and left on. Look at the next symptom here: yawning.
Yeah,
Yawning. Your
yeah,
heart's pounding, your eyes are dilated, your hair standing on end, and you're yawning.
yeah. Nah, that was
Your
crazy.
body's ready to run from the bear, and you're yawning.
Eyes
Guys,
watering.
Mother Nature has put hundreds of millions of years to make sure you didn't fall asleep while you were running from the bear. And
Right.
those who did fall asleep while they were running from the bear did not pass on their genetic information. They got ate by the bear.
Yes.
They got ate by the bear. So right there, 1938, 1938, these guys were talking about a dysfunction in the autonomic nervous system. And they're saying, look, the pupils are dilated, the hair standing on end, they're restless, their heart is pounding, and they're yawning. To them, it was obvious.
Correct.
This is a dysfunction in a major organ system of the body. This is a dysfunction in the nervous system.
Yeah.
We're looking at all the symptoms right here. And the next symptom is runny nose, rhinorrhea.
Yeah.
Rhino means runny nose. Okay, now here's something you probably wouldn't know. There's no reason you would know this, but when you sleep, okay, when you sleep, your body does not want your eyes, your nose, or your mouth to dry out.
Right.
Okay, so while you sleep, part of the sleep cycle is small amounts of salty water are secreted to keep mainly the nose and the eyes moist, and the mouth to some degree, but the nose and the eyes. And you know that because when you wake up in the morning, you know the Sandman's been there, and you got the uh, the little granules of salt from where the moisture did dry out.
Right.
Okay, so if
Correct.
you've got dysfunction in your rest and digest system, it would make total sense that your eyes would water and your nose would water. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So yawning, runny nose, watery eyes, those are part of the abnormality in the rest and digest system, and that's why you see rhinorrhea, which is runny nose, uh, uh, lacrimentation, which is watery eyes, and then the next one, perspiration. Okay,
Yes.
perspiration. You don't sweat while you sleep.
No.
You sweat while you run from the bear.
Right.
Okay, so running from the bear is the dilated pupils, the pounding heart, the restlessness, the hair standing on end because you're trying to scare the bear, the pouring sweat, and the rest and digest is watery nose. Okay, and the last symptoms are obviously part of rest and digest,
Right.
vomiting and diarrhea. Although I think I'm surprised you don't have abdominal cramp also, but those are the symptoms back in 1938.
And
Okay,
see,
and they say
that
that
angry, that makes me so angry. Like it just
Yeah.
1938. I mean it's
Yeah.
almost 100 years from now. I mean 100 years ago. Like it's just that.
Yeah.
I just have a loss of words for that. Like I can't even fathom why this was okay, why it was allowed for so long. You know,
Right.
like, was human life not thought about? Was humans not thought about? Were people not thought about? It doesn't. I just don't understand. It doesn't comprehend with my brain because no amount of money in the world is worth what's happening right now in our country, in the world with these opioids. It's not worth it. It's
Right.
just not worth it.
Now it's
I mean,
only progressed year to
yeah,
year.
I don't care how lucrative the business is, how much money they're making. It's not worth all the lives that are being lost It's just
Exactly.
not worth it. It's just not right to me. It doesn't sit well with me. When I see 1963 and then 1938, I just keep thinking, how could they do this? So
Right.
long ago, they knew what was going on. I mean, it's heartbreaking.
Yes. They know
Absolutely.
what's going on now, too. They're not stupid.
And they
Now
keep
it's only
trying to they keep coming up with ways to blame it on other people. Let's blame it on the providers. Let's blame it on the patients. Let's do this. Let's do that. But they're
basic.
never going to stand up and say, "Hey, listen, guys, we made a mistake. We knew this almost 100 years ago, and we still put it out in the population for people to consume. We're sorry." That they're not going to do that. They're not going to take. They're not going to take responsibility for what they've done. It's too much of a liability, and I feel like this is why they're trying to put the blame game on everybody else. And that's just my personal opinion, though. But when you see articles like this, there's no other way of thinking. There's nothing else you can think. But they knew. They had to
Right.
have known.
It's
They
laid
did.
out in black and white.
Travis, whether they knew or not is an unknown. It's impossible to know what's in another person's head. But Travis, there's no denying that they had the responsibility to know.
Correct.
Exactly. They
Correct.
had the responsibility to make sure that they knew what they were putting out into population for the mass to consume, and they failed. They failed at their responsibility. I mean, times 100. I mean, they failed everybody, and that's just how I feel about this. I mean, it's just
Oh, yeah.
unacceptable. Unacceptable. This should
Like
not
they
have. This
say.
should not have. It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened.
I
So
totally agree.
before we leave this page, I think it's very important for our listeners that we state exactly what we're saying here. Now, what we're saying here is that way back in 1938, they were looking at this set of symptoms as something that was associated with a major malfunction in the nervous system. They were not looking at this list of symptoms as having something to do with crazy opioids or wanting to get high opioids, anything to do with addiction. The science they were looking at back in 1938 recognized the fact that this set of symptoms, very symptoms every single one of you experienced when you got sick, this set of symptoms was associated with a dysfunction in the nervous system in the body. And I put forth that knowing that this set of symptoms is associated with a dysfunction in the nervous system, there is no way in heck you could get the opioids past the FDA with that science.
So,
Right.
so Dr. Smith, you're saying that they knew that consumption of opioids would go into our DNA and basically mess up our
They
receptors.
didn't
Is
know
that
the
what you're saying?
DNA. They didn't know the DNA. They knew
They
the
didn't
final
know
outcome.
the DNA. Okay.
They didn't know the step in between. They saw
Okay.
that when a person took opioids to the point where they developed a tolerance,
Okay.
they stopped taking the opioids. They showed symptoms of a neurotoxicity, a damage to the nerve.
Oh. Wow. Okay. Yes. Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still they. I mean, still that they. I mean, I hate to say it, but they still knew. They still knew
Yeah.
what it would do after taking it for a while,
Well,
and
and
they should have.
they still had to see somebody go through this and watch somebody do this to know
Bingo.
this.
Bingo,
You know,
Sam.
that's what I'm saying, this poor, pitiful, nameless person that had to go through these withdrawal symptoms, and these people watch them and see this happen. And it just breaks my heart knowing that somebody probably died, and these people seen it
My
in
That is
first
a good
opioid
point.
1930s,
went to the prison.
in the 1930s.
Yeah.
They went to the prison and they used inmates. My
Right.
gosh.
And see,
Wow.
I mean, that just makes it even worse for me because
Yeah,
that could have been
yeah,
me.
Yeah.
yeah.
That could have been.
People in prison are human beings too, and I've said this before, and I mean it. I don't wish that on my worst enemy what I went through. I
No.
mean, and
No.
I don't think any of us would, and it's that horrific, and I don't think that was right either. But what Sam said is a very, very valid point, and I agree with her 100%. whoever that was that had to go through that test, because you're talking about 1938, they didn't have the technology they do now. So they literally probably set this man or woman in a room and watched them take these
Right.
opioids for however long, and then watch them, come off of them, withdrawal or whatever you want to call it. They watched this happen, and there's no telling if they lived or died at all. We don't know, but it's just that makes it worse for me too. I don't like that either. I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Travis, we did it to you. Travis, we did it to you. We waited.
I volunteered though. This person probably didn't have a choice.
That is the difference. What's called informed consent, and you
Right.
did it voluntarily. Right. That's the difference.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and,
So
and Samantha, thank you for being the humanist in our group.
Yes.
For the role that you played. We have a deacon. And we have a legal plaintiff.
the deacon.
The deacon.
That cracks me up. I'm sorry.
All
Me
right,
too.
guys. we're
Josh, I put you in my phone. When I put you in my contacts, I put Deacon. I didn't mean to, but I know your name, but I put the Deacon. That's what I put.
That's hilarious.
Like the Terminator, but the Deacon.
We've run out of time, and before we run out of time today, okay, Chris, you can take that down. We're done. We made it all the way to the end, and I want to ask
Samantha, how's your son?
you guys a question because y'all brought this question up. So here's the question. Okay, y'all know as well as I do. Right now, today, in jails in every county of this country, there is somebody sitting there in withdrawal,
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and you know how the guards are treating them.
Yes.
Oh yeah. They don't give you anything. They don't give you medicine. They don't give you Subutex, Suboxone. They don't give you
Nothing.
nothing.
So here's my question. Here's the question, and then I'm gonna throw the floor to you guys. I'm gonna stay quiet, okay? But let me make sure I get the question out there. And before I go quiet, I want to make sure everybody understands the question. What those jails and prison are doing by locking people up while they're sick and denying them access to medical care while they're sick. And this sickness turns out not to be an addiction, not to be a mental illness, but to be a dysfunction in the body, a dysfunction in the nervous system, and including adrenaline toxicity, which will kill you dead. Okay. If you were one of those prisoners, do you now have a lawsuit against the jail for denying you access to medical care?
I mean, I would agree with that.
I would, but I think it's a little far-fetched just because they have medical facilities there and they will say that they gave you, that they, tried to address your symptoms because just speaking from experience, every time I went in when I was withdrawing, they would give me like stuff for nausea or Tylenol or whatever, they'll say that they done what they could up to
Okay.
minus giving you a narcotic,
That actually
I
takes us,
think it's very well that, yeah, it should be able to be a lawsuit, but I don't know if it would ever
okay.
go
That
through.
actually takes us to the next level. That actually takes us to the next level. I put the bait out there, and you took the bait, and you hit the nail right on the head, Sam, like you always do. Okay. You're right. You're right. They have a medical staff and a medical facility, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Therefore, they have an obligation to a proper diagnosis. And if they do not supply a proper diagnosis, then that is malpractice for failure to diagnose. And if they
Right.
diagnose you with opioid addiction, when in reality you were showing all the signs and symptoms, they gave you the wrong diagnosis.
Yep.
Right.
So what would that be considered malpractice?
100% malpractice. 100%.
But
Okay.
back in that day, back when you were in Samantha, that's when they were only allowed, only doctors that had a license to provide Suboxone could give Suboxone. That's probably why you never
Well,
got
at that time,
Suboxone.
they weren't, there was no narcotics in jails or prisons. So, at the county jail that I went to, there was a girl that come in and she was pregnant and she had been on Suboxone and they were giving her Subutex. So she was allowed to take hers, but she had to go out into the front. You know, but that was not for her.
She was only allowed because she was pregnant and they could not afford the
Right,
death of the baby. The baby would have
right,
died if the baby would have went into
right.
withdrawal. So that's the
Right.
only
Yeah,
reason they allowed her to take that. But
yes.
as of right now, I know someone that my pastor is visiting in jail right now. They do not allow
Mhm.
Suboxone. It's very hard to
They
get
won't.
still. You
Mm-mm.
have to have some kind of like big health problem going on and be
Yeah.
at risk of death before
Right.
they let you get anything. And that's just
Mhm.
the fact of the matter. They'll let them people sit in there and suffer. They don't care.
Now, in the prison system, it's a little bit different, but it's still very, very hard. I mean, you're
Prison,
not
they
gonna.
still consider Suboxone and Subutex. They consider that a
Yeah.
schedule, a class, whatever. And if you get caught with it, you're
Yeah.
going to go to the
Class
hole.
2. Yeah.
You get in trouble,
Yep.
you get written up, and you go to the
Yep.
hole. That's my understanding
Yeah.
from, and that's from my
It,
pastor because we were
yeah, it
actually
really
talking
is.
about this the other
And I
day.
mean, I don't care to tell you, I had no idea about Suboxone until I went to prison. That was the first time I had even learned anything about Suboxone. And I'm here to tell you, up there, you're going to be paying a lot for it. You know, and people do, and people get caught with it, and they, just because they don't want to buy other drugs to feed their habit, and they want to try to get clean, and they can't get clean in prison because they're getting in trouble for trying to get something to get clean with, you know?
That's
So, I
Exactly.
mean,
That
it's
doesn't
terrible.
just
make
amazing to
sense.
me.
That's terrible.
It's amazing. It's crazy.
All right,
It
guys.
really
Over
is.
the weekend, I want you guys to think about this because next week, okay, we're gonna pick up with this question again. Now,
Okay.
I will tell you this: I have consulted and worked within the correctional healthcare system before, and I understand that the uh, requirement to properly diagnose is the same if you're in a jail or a medical office or a hospital.
Hmm.
The requirement on the physician does not change based on the location. So
Okay.
if they give you the diagnosis of opioid addiction, when in reality you were showing signs and symptoms of a damage to your nervous system, that is malpractice. That is failure to diagnose. And
Okay.
next week, what I want to hear from you guys is what you think about what should happen to these jails, prisons, and hospitals who sent people out while they were sick, people begging for help.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's a good one. It'll take all weekend to even wrap my mind around that.
Yeah.
You know.
We're going to look at a law next week called EMTALA, EMTALA, Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. It requires
Emergency medical treatment and labor act.
to stabilize the person,
Emergency medical treatment and labor act.
Hmm.
failure to stabilize prior to discharge is a crime.
Okay. How do you spell that, Dr. Doug?
Emergency medical.
EMT, Emergency Medical Treatment Act, EMTALA.
Emergency medical treatment act.
That's
Emergency
okay.
medical treatment act. Emergency
Thank you.
medical treatment act.
All right.
Just so you know, the statute of limitations on a violation of EMTALA is 2 years.
Yeah.
But if
Emergency medical.
anybody's listening to us, to an emergency department for help, and they were told, oh, you're just a drug addict, go home, get out of here, not do anything,
Right.
they got a case.
That's terrible.
It's
Well,
illegal.
I've heard it how many times.
I'm a firm believer once everybody hears about the science that we have and what we're doing here, they're going to start changing the way they think about opioids. I can't
Yes.
talk for all the other drugs, but when it comes to opioids, they're wrong. I mean, the science
Absolutely.
is here. So
I'll be honest. Suboxone has a negative stigma on it now. So, but I don't call it that. I call it buprenorphine because what it is. Me.
yeah, and
I
it
knew
saved
she was
my
fixing
life.
to come up here.
That stuff saved my life, Josh.
Me too.
So, and they do talk bad about it. People will say, "Oh, you're not clean. You're taking this." But everybody who knew me when I was on pain pills and they know me now, they're like, "Nah, he's clean. Trust me.
That's
The
right.
way he's living now and the way he was living, trust me. It's night and day. There's no difference. I mean, there's a big difference. Big difference." So, and Samantha was talking about this yesterday with me. You know, she was like saying all these things that happened. She was like, it was like I didn't have a choice. You know, people thought I had a choice. And I was like, well, I'm here to tell you, I know you didn't, because I went through the
Right.
same thing. And you don't have a choice. It's either be sick or don't be sick. And you're going to choose
You're
not to
not
be
gonna be
sick
sick.
every time. And so that's the problem. You know, it's just,
You're gonna do
it's
what you gotta do to not be sick.
exactly
Right.
like that's all you're caring about. You don't care about nothing else, and nothing else matters but not being sick. You have to have your medicine. So, you know, for them to say that we have a choice, I just don't agree with that either, because I never felt like I had a choice. I never
Oh,
had a choice. It was either be sick and not be able to take care of my family and not be able to function normally, or it was go out and get something and be normal and be able to function and be able to work. And so I didn't have a choice.
not neither. I'm with you. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
So,
There's Miss Christie.
yeah, she's coming to kick us off.
Yes. I know. We could go on
Kick
forever
us
with this
off.
conversation. I can't get over it. Time flies. So thank you so much for joining us today, every Monday through Thursday, live with Dr. B. So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Dr. B.
Thanks, Dr.
Later,
B.